Hildebrand stood on the high lay, in the faint light from a half-moon. The fire of fury smoldered inside her. Wild gales whipped her skirts around her bare legs and lifted her long red hair, twisting strands over her face. Grassy stubble on the pasture scratched her bare feet, and the irritation felt good. It was something real to aggravate her mood, something tangible to curse. The turbulence of the wind met its match in her seething anger. He was coming back, her father. In her entire 18 years, she had nurtured a healthy hate for the man. She had to. If ever she gave in, if she let down her guard, she might become weak and long for him, the father she never knew. And what did he care for her? As far as Brandeen knew, he had never so much as sent a note to ask about the health of herself or her mother. She had to defend herself against the townspeople of Cullymor. She despised him. She hated the self-righteous snubs of the women toward Peig Kelborn, her little mother, and the sly leers of the men when Peig and her fatherless daughter had to visit the shops. It didn't seem to bother Peig. Let them think what they would. She would just smile that secretive little smile. Her blue eyes would take on a soft glow, and she would behave kindly toward everyone in their path. Now then, Hildy darlin', don't be letting them trouble you. Someday your dad'll be coming home to us, and all will be well. You'll see. Coming home, you say, and he never so much as set foot in our cottage in all these years? Leaving you with the shame of birthing a baby without a husband at your side. I'm sorry for all you've suffered, my good lass, but it will all come right when he comes. It will soon be now that his father has died. May God have pity on his stubborn old soul. Pity indeed. Pity old John Fitzmichael, living up there in the grand house of Leganhor. If he was her grandfather sure, as Peig quietly assured her, then it was a hard man he was. Never so much as looking in the direction of Hildy on the cobbled street of Cullymor when he rode by on his fine horse. He was not about to claim the woods colt of his eldest son then. The wife of old John was not any different. As the grand lady sat in her carriage rolling over the cobblestones, she also avoided Peig and her daughter, but somehow Hildy could feel that the woman was very much aware of them. Strangely, it was not a feeling of harsh cold. Instead, something warm went through the girl at the sight of Margaret Fitzmichael with her ruffled clothes and her parasol, and the bonnet that could not conceal her rich red hair piled into fashionable coifs, her hair much the color of Hildy's own. Shaking her head sharply, Hildebrand tried to lose the tender imaginings that welled up to soften her mood. No, she would not think that someone might care about her. She knew better. No one loved her but Peig Kelborn, and Hildy hated everyone else, especially the man who had fathered her and left her before she was born. She stood there, in the pale dark on the high mound of earth and rock, a cairn, the burial place of Irish ancestors in the distant past. It seemed to her that she could feel their primitive energy in the earth beneath her feet. Crack! A pistol shot rang out. Hildy turned and saw a red glow rising behind a clump of scrub elms far down beyond the hillside. From that direction and distance, that had to be the mansion of Lord Sidney, an ascendancy landlord in the next townland. It was burning. She moved a few steps, better to see around a tall, rough stone that stood on the rise. The great dark bulk of it stood like a giant in the pale light. Suddenly, against the crisp fingers of tree limbs outlined by the light of the fire, a shadowy silhouette appeared. The rider's horse mounted the slope swiftly and thundered across the blowing grass right toward Hildy, dark cloak flying, racing with the wind. Hildy stood her ground. He could have run her down. He came so close. She could not see his face. Passing her without a glance, he bolted down the other side of the hill into the open meadowland and off toward a gap in the mountains. Then she heard the sound of many hooves. Quickly, she dropped to the ground and pressed tightly against the rough stone pillar, blending as best she could into the black shadow. Half a dozen more riders came pounding up the hill, following the path of the lone horseman across the lea and down the far slope. In the faint light, Hildy saw the blue glint of drawn swords and a white stripe on the side of their breeches. Dragoons, horse soldiers of the British Army, garrisoned all over Ireland to keep the natives in line. She shrunk closer yet to the covering darkness at the foot of the stone. It was better for an Irish lass not to be caught out in the night by English soldiers. The army was hard put to keep order with the tenant farmers who struggled to survive under the boot heel of Anglo laws. Although they had no legal rights, the peasant stock of Ireland objected to being thrown out of their mud-floored cabins to wander the roads with their aged ones and children. The soldiers faced constant aggravation from fellows like that lone rider. He was a Fenian, sure, Brandeen thought, a member of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. He and his cohorts took pleasure in urging the Brits to go home to their queen and leave Ireland to the Irish.